Okay. Even though there may be people coming in, that's okay. But so appropriate to the unfortunate timing of this meeting where all of our mindsets are this past week, I'd like to share with you two prayers. The first one was written in California by Nicole Guzik and Eretz Sherman, actually written last Sunday when the shock of everything, but just as applicable now. Let me just say welcome to everybody here, but also those joining us on Zoom as well. I assume you can hear without a problem? Okay, good, thank you. Rabbono Shel Olam, Master of Mercy, this past Shabbat, we ended the Torah with a Lamed and we began the Torah, Breshit, with a Bet. We're reminded that our Lev, Lamed Bet, our heart is in your hands, our broken, confused, agonizing hearts. Give us the strength to cradle Eretz Yisrael through this unfathomable time in Jewish history. God, reunite children with parents, grandparents with children, friends with community, sisters with brothers, babies who cry for their homes. May the wounded physically, emotionally, spiritually find healing in the coming days, months, and years. Let the bereft understand they are not alone, not today, not tomorrow, for this journey of grief will be long. God, you hold our shattered, fractured, punctured hearts, the heart of a Jewish nation, the heart of the Jewish people. God, you hold our heart, piece together our broken slivers of compassion and mercy and love, shard by shard, one by one, never the same. No, never the same, but always united. Remind us today, tomorrow, and the days to come that we are forever Am Echad, Belev Echad, one people with one heart. And we say, Amen. And the second prayer that I would like to share was read today at a Zoom of rabbis, conservative rabbis from around the world, with the Masorti Israeli rabbis as a show of chizuk, of strength and support to them. So this was the prayer that was put out by the Masorti movement and the Rabbinical Assembly of Israel. God of Israel, our rock and our redeemer, God of mercy, of compassion, we pray, we plead that you return these precious and beloved people, the captured and the missing, who have cruelly and heartlessly been torn from their homes and carried off to our enemy's territory. We're terrified contemplating their fate, horrified at the thought of what the missing and the captured are suffering right now. They lay beyond our reach and our capacity to save them. And so we plead before you, Av Harachamim, Father of mercy, be at their side, support them, protect them, and quickly bring them back to the embrace of their families. We beseech you, Adonai, quickly fulfill your word from Breshit. Here I am with you, I will watch over you wherever you go, and will bring you back to this land. Indeed, I will not leave you until I have done what I have said I would do. To all of that, I would add the fact that in addition to all of our messages of support that I know so many of us who know people in Israel, have friends who have children serving in the IDF or who have lost people, that we back up our words and our feelings with tzedakah and donations. There was something sent out from Beth Israel. We have the FIDF program 2 weeks from this Shabbat, a wonderful place to start. Cindy and I made donations, not just to them, but also to the Michael Levin Lone Soldiers, for those soldiers who are fighting but don't have family that live in Israel. The Associated of course, which will be supporting our sister city of Ashkelon, which was hit amongst the hardest as far as rockets in the south, and the Masorti movement itself, which the conservative movement in Israel, which supports the Masorti synagogues in the south as well, and any other tzedakah that you can and are willing to support. So welcome, everyone. And just as a point of relevance to meeting tonight, in a sense, as of now, the only African nation to strongly denounce the attack last Shabbat by Hamas are Kenya and Morocco, the current chair of the Arab League. Morocco has formal now relationships with Israel, for those of you that don't came around the Abraham Accords. And I saw something interesting today on a major foreign policy website that Rabat, in a sense, Morocco has struggled to align strong support for Israel against some domestic opposition. The two countries, Israel and Morocco, normalized ties in exchange for recognition of Morocco's sovereignty over the disputed Western Sahara, where the Polisario Front seeks independence. Since the deal with Israel, Morocco has ramped up purchases of drones and other military equipment from Israel in an arms race with its rival Algeria, which backs Palestine and Polisario. Ricardo Fabiani, a North African project director, said the Moroccan monarchy has made a concerted effort to conflate the conflict between Israel, Iran, and Hamas with its own. It's interesting that they sort of take the side of Israel and see themselves in the same way as what they're experiencing as a country. And just also related to that, because I had many questions about this, we received a couple emails from J2, the tour company that we will hopefully be traveling with next September. And they had highlighted the fact, and I'm sure you've read about it as well, that most of the damage existed higher, further up in the Atlas Mountains. There was very little damage in the first of the three cities we'll be visiting. Marrakesh did have some minor damage, some outside walls of a synagogue. Certainly the Shuk, given how it was built, things collapsed a bit there. But all the groups that were planning on going already this year after the holidays are still going. And it doesn't really affect any of the trips, except maybe they've added an element of tikkun olam for the, some communities that may have been affected. Just by way of an introduction, I chose the date around a lot of different things going on in our lives, potentially, but also because of the weather. I listened in to the Chizuk Emunah, or I got the tape of the Chizuk Emunah's trip first meeting out of curiosity. And when someone asked, what's the weather? Because they're going at the end of November, beginning of December, right after Thanksgiving. He said, well, it'll be up to like 52 during the day and could be down into the 30s, at night or somewhere along those lines. This trip, which comes back still 12 days before Rosh Hashanah, in Casablanca, it's going to be a high of, usually there's that time of year, 80 high and 68 low. Fez, 84 high, 66 low. Rabat's 80 high, 69. Marrakesh, because it's further into the center of the country, a little bit higher, around high 80s, 90 and 71. Personally, I like to travel with that kind of weather and not have to worry not too hot, but also not heavy coats and layers and freezing. The trip is being organized by J2. When we tried a Beth Israel trip that didn't come to fruition 10 years ago, it was with Da'at Travel. And there were a number of different travel agencies that didn't survive COVID on their own. And they banded together to create the 2 or 3 of them, smaller ones, Dot and a couple others, to create J2, which they do trips to Israel, but their specialty, in a sense, is Morocco because of the trips to Morocco that have been heightened over the last few years. And I chose them specifically because of that. We're still in an African Muslim country, and you want to go with a group that has a lot of people on the ground and experience in taking Jewish groups. And that's important that they have the connections on the ground and do this on a regular basis whenever you're traveling, especially if you're traveling in an Islamic African country, despite the huge amount of tourism that Morocco gets in general. Okay, so everybody has one of these. What I thought we would do, and then you can hold your questions, and we'll have an opportunity here, or those that joined us on Zoom, if there are any questions. It's a few pages in where it says program itinerary. There will be an attempt to create a group flight. Usually requires a minimum number of people. There aren't a huge number of flights to Morocco. There are some direct flights from Dulles to Casablanca. But if people leave from Marrakesh, then often you have to fly into Portugal or somewhere else to then go to New Jersey or other places. So it's in and out of one. Some people may choose to fly as a group. Other people may use their air mileage. I'm sure there would be many people. It is a wonderful opportunity to, if you have extra time, to go to Spain, southern Spain, or Portugal, and areas along those lines, because it is really you can almost see Morocco from Gibraltar. Literally, it's about a half-hour boat ride over. So not to Casablanca, but some people may choose to do that. Others may choose, in order to deal with the time change, which I believe is 6 hours, 5 hours. I looked it up and I forgot to write it down. By spending a day or so, maybe Shabbat, in Casablanca before, because we're spending 1 day coming back and 1 day in Casablanca. It's a huge city, metropolitan city. The other cities we're going to are smaller and easier to tour. So we're going to see not Rick's Cafe, which isn't Rick's Cafe anyway, except for what they showed in the movies. But it's also an opportunity for people that want to come a day or two earlier. And eventually we will get a price for what it is for the hotel for people that want to stay there. So departure will be some point on Sunday, and we'll have a general time for when we anticipate we'd like people to be in by on Monday, when we begin with an orientation after a check-in. We're actually going to go on a little tiul, a little trip that day to the only Jewish day school in Casablanca. Neve Shalom, it's also called Otsar HaTorah. It's really 2 different schools that meet together with the same director, Rabbi Jackie Seabag. It's the last of what used to be at one point many Jewish day schools. It's the last one in Morocco. So it should be interesting, has about 400 students. We'll then also go to Bethel, which is the largest of the synagogues, was refurbished in 97, considered to be the main synagogue, where we'll meet with someone from the local community that will give us a broad overview of what it's like, Labriut, for a Jew living in Morocco today. Just by matter of historical context, before 1948, pre the establishment of the State of Israel, there were about 350,000 Arabic-speaking Jews in Morocco, the largest concentration in the entire Islamic Arabic-speaking world. There are no exact numbers for how many there are today. Most people say it's more like 1,700. I've seen other places that say it's close to 3,000 to 4,000, but clearly the majority of Jews made Aliyah, because Israel has a large Moroccan heritage of Jews of Moroccan heritage that made Aliyah. So that will be the first day. I had someone say, well, how exhausting will be this trip? But the people that ask it are people who have been on some of our trips to Israel and Spain and Eastern Europe. And I have to admit, I did exhaust people to the bone from early morning till late at night. But I also recognize that some of us, including me, are 20 years older than the first time. No, it's 25 years ago I led the first Beth Israel trip. So it's at a softer pace than it was before. What I can promise is huge amounts of time for shopping. I mean, we are busy during the day. We don't have, there's a couple opportunities, but we don't have like a lot of trips, half day touring, and then the general trips give you, half day, 3 or 4 or 5 days out of the trip. We do go from the morning after breakfast throughout the day. Times we come back to the hotel, but we're not going till late at night with speakers and all of that. So we'll have a dinner at a local restaurant the first night. And then that's it. That's a part of the one we check out. We're spending a little time, right, through lunch, and then make our way to Fez. So in the morning, we'll visit the Mosque of Hassan II, who ruled from early 60s, 61 to 99. So a very long-standing ruler of Israel. And this is actually one of the largest mosques in the world. It's actually also one of few, especially in the Islamic world, that will allow Jews inside, which tells you a lot about Morocco, and it's been that way for a long time. They've always had strong ties with the Jewish community, believed, especially Hassan II, for peace and reconciliation. Actually, it was early 90s, 93 or 94, that he was one of the first rulers in an Arab country to break the boycott of Israel. Used to be an orphanage before they completed it in the 90s, finished it a little bit in the 90s. So I said it's one of the largest. It's actually the largest in Africa, and it's the 7th largest in the world as far as a mosque. And then we're going to go to the Museum of the Jews of Morocco, which is the only existing Jewish museum in the Islamic world. There is no other Islamic country that has a Jewish museum. And it was completed also rather recently. And then before we depart for Casablanca, we'll have lunch at the Jewish Club. I wouldn't expect too much from the Jewish Club. It's not going to be leather chairs with martinis. It's that kind of a club. Maybe some older people playing checkers and chess. So obviously we'll do in each city a general tour of the city that you have an opportunity to see, and the Medina and the walled city from the fortress. And we'll be visiting a couple different synagogues, one that from the 17th century, Ibn Danan, that was restored in the late 90s. As it says here, oldest, most important synagogue. Another one that was a boxing ring and a carpet factory, just restored about 10 years ago. And then the Fez Jewish Cemetery, which dates back to the late 19th century. And many of the rabbis that are buried there, and then experience what it's like to be in Morocco, a maze of alleyways and streets, and largest car-free pedestrian zone in the world. That's unusual, must be pretty big. You get to see local craftsmen, a tour of the next page of the madrasa, where, madrasa is where they study the Quran all day long, one of the few that's accessible again, to be able to see them studying in a Muslim, that allows non-Muslim visitors. We'll have lunch. And then it's a stop because you can only see from the outside the University of Al-Qarawiyyin, believed to be the oldest in the world. I don't know what the oldest in the world is or who's number two. I didn't Google that. And then we're going to visit one of the main tanneries, the largest of the three, that dates back to actually the beginning of the 9th century. So if we do have the trip, and I forget to do it, I'm not going to do it now. I'll tell you the story of before we go to the tannery, of what it says in the Talmud about if you are a tanner, what it says about the rules of getting a divorce. That's just a teaser. I'm not going to tell you now. I think I said, but if I didn't, because I know there would be a question, there are 3 periods of driving on the tour bus. So from Casablanca to Fez, it's about 3 hours and 20 minutes or so. From Fez to Rabat, the next city, it's about 2 hours and 20 minutes. Don't worry. You know what? One of the first questions I asked the bus driver was, is there a bathroom on the bus? I'm not just asking for you, of course, right? And they said, no, like Israel, there isn't. But of course, we'll stop as often as we need to stop. And those that went to Eastern Europe in 2019, we did stop a lot. So what? There was, but it wasn't such a great, yes, such as it was, we still stopped, even though there was. So that the trip to Rabat, the capital of Morocco, is 2 hours and 20 minutes. We'll walk around the royal palace of the current king. We'll visit the mausoleum of Muhammad V. The king was World War II, also had a hand in preventing Nazis from sending Morocco Jews to death camps in Europe. And the mausoleum of his son that we spoke about, that we'll see the palace of in Casablanca, who ruled over Morocco. You can always, it's amazing if you've never done any reading about it, and we'll probably have a lecture or two and maybe a cooking lesson over the course of the year. But the Moroccan connection and the Jewish connection to Morocco is a very, very ancient one. Some say it ties all the way back to the destruction of the first temple. certainly the apex perhaps of the increase in the Jewish community was, someone can probably tell me the date. When do you think? When do you think was really sort of the largest migration of Jews that would have come after the Inquisition from Spain to Portugal? And many of them came, which is where, by the way, they came into contact with the Berbers and developed a strong relationship with them. Actually, they developed a strong relationship with them, a little bit of history, back in 711, when the Islamic world invaded Spain. It took them a long time before they could conquer all of Spain. They conquered the southern part, but there was, Christians were in the north, and those of you that came to Spain, was there anybody on the Spain trip that's here? You were on the Spain trip, right, okay. In 711, the Islamic conquerors left the cities that they were conquering to the Jews and the Berbers in order to handle. Interesting stories of the Berbers. When the Jews came, the Berbers, many of them converted to Judaism. Then later on, they converted under Christian rule to Christianity, and then later on to Muslim. But there's always been a strong Berber connection. So this is where we'll have an opportunity to walk through the markets, and they put in this, not me, jewelry stores and grand old diplomatic complexes of the Medina as we go to the Kasbah de Udayas. The Kasbah de Udayas is a 12th century, actually an Almohades town. Does the term Almohades from your Jewish history? No, Almohades were the very, very fanatical Islamists that took over southern Spain, and that was actually during the period that Maimonides had to flee because of them. But in the meantime, they created this beautiful old ancient streets and series of streets in this town. And it's there that we're going to meet, which is the top of the next page, with members of the Association Maimuna of Muslim students, who part of their traditions are honoring the country's Jewish traditions and promoting Jewish and Muslim friendship in Morocco. Next day, the road to Marrakesh is a 3-hour or so ride, and tour of the city. I don't know, Cindy, if she was here, would tell me how, since it's a garden of a French painter, Jacques, I don't know exactly how his name would be pronounced in French. Cindy, on there? Anybody else know? Majorelle. Okay, 1924. Beautiful gardens. We will also visit the Berber Museum that was founded in 2011. That's housed in the garden. And then prepare for Shabbat, which we'll be having at Bethel Synagogue, which was built in the 50s, and have Shabbat dinner together at the hotel. Shabbat itself, services in the morning obviously are optional. I hope that people will come. That synagogue was established in 1492 by Sephardic Jews that left. And I'm not sure, they claim to say that it's been continuing functioning since 1492. If that's the case, then it may be the oldest functioning, I mean, they don't have a lot of people, but the oldest functioning synagogue in the Jewish world. It'll be mostly a walking tour on Shabbat, but we're staying right next to the Medina, the walled city. Actually, the hotel we stay at, you can look up the hotels on the website. We were just recently upgraded, which is why it was changed on the website in Rabat, because I wasn't happy, and so they upgraded us to a different hotel. But this hotel is one that they always say people go to the hotel and they look at it because it's all concrete walls and they think I'm going inside a prison. But it's one of those traditional hotels in Morocco that inside are beautiful mosaics around a pool, and we'll have patio rooms around the pool. And then upstairs, there's another pool that oversees the Medina and the walled city, etc. We'll go to the Dar al-Bacha Palace, which is from the 18th century, with gardens, etc. The Madrasa Ben Yusuf, also architecture, was built in the 14th century. It has a school of theology, etc. But it's supposedly a beautiful place to visit. And then there'll be free time to explore Marrakesh's marketplace and the square. And then we'll gather together for Havdalah that night. So there'll be a few times. Are you going to bring a flute so you can charm some of the snakes that are?
Not if you want to stay together on this.
The next on Sunday, the role of imam in Moroccan society. So we'll begin the day with a discussion with a professor of English and a local imam about what is the nature and the style of Islam in Morocco, and how is Islam different from Islam throughout the rest of the Islamic world. We'll explore a little more the Jewish quarter of Marrakesh. We will have already seen the Salat al-Azama synagogue, so but we may get a little more history, and the Jewish cemetery of Marrakesh. We'll have a cooking workshop there with lunch and mint tea. And then there'll be some time, again, to explore Marrakesh, especially for those that don't go out on Shabbat, for the other things. So there is a little time in there for some shopping or going to one of the hammams for, like a schwitz. Schwitz.
Oh, it's a schwitz.
Yeah, a local schwitz where they throw stuff on you and steam and, all of that. Day 9. Next page. We're going to explore, which is essentially the last full day, Berber life in the Atlas Mountains. And that's where we go to the Urqa Valley. Where we would be going is, a little bit outside, but at the foot of the Atlas Mountains again, that didn't suffer. Most of the huge damage that you saw were further up in the Atlas Mountains. If it did affect certain parts of the Berbers, it'll be rebuilt. And I'm sure even for the trips going now, they've made rearrangements for them to experience Berber life in the Atlas Mountains. So there'll be a remote village, assuming it with where the kids are educated, the local economy, farm terraces, ancient irrigation. We get to do a wet clay ceramics workshop. We get to make bread in the traditional way, and then have a Berber lunch with tagine dishes, stews. Obviously, ours will be vegetarian or fish-based. Many of you know this, if not most of you, but on the trip there are breakfasts in the hotel, of course, every morning, and there are 4 lunches and 4 dinners. So basically, half the lunches and dinners when we go together for lunch or for dinner. I think the only kosher place is the Jewish Club, I believe, in Casablanca. The other places will have fish or vegetarian, and then there'll be other opportunities. Some of the lunches will be on the way, stopping and people eating, and then others will be opportunities to have dinner. And of course, there are always recommendations, etc. And then we'll go to a cemetery of Rabbi Shlomo Bell-Hench, a lot of legends. It actually is a rabbi, lots of stories about him, that was venerated not just by Jews, but by Muslims who died in the 15th century. So it was really when the Jews were first establishing a community in Morocco. And then we return, and then we have what hopefully will be a fun-filled last evening on our trips. And almost everybody's been on one of our trips. We ask people to think about it, and they write and do poems and songs and share. That is our hope for the tour. The details, I did the trip for today because it officially opens up for registration Monday online. There's plenty of time to sign up. Nimrod Shafran, who's the one that I have been working with, said, well, we'll offer $100 off if people sign up within 30 days. It's a long way in advance. And I'm not sure how that would work. I mean, it does show that you get a certain amount back. So, my guess is I would forego this, unless you're absolutely certain and are going to get travel insurance and everything right away. I would, at least indicate your interest, your serious interest to me, so I know where we are when it comes to numbers. One of the things that you notice there is that I hope we can all work to get other people that we know of that might be interested, because if we get up to 25 participants, the price goes down by over $400. That's the biggest break in price break. And if there are more, then it goes down also more. And that would mean extra meals, or however we do that. It comes back to the group. So let me open it up in questions. And I guess first, anybody on Zoom have a question that they want to ask? No? Okay, here.
So I was confused about, should we sign up?
I wanted to clarify. I started out by saying, or maybe not before I started, I wanted to clarify with Nimrod how that would work. If you sign up, then you're putting down that deposit. But then it says later on that, I have to clarify for him when you can get that deposit back, right? And this was not the week to be in touch with him. I had a couple of questions. By the way, the buses can hold, it depends on the size of the bus, but they're modern buses, albeit without bathrooms, but like Israel. And they probably have between 45 and 48, but I would, halavai, we should get 40 people, but we always like to leave a few extra seats, because I know amongst some of you, some people have sprained their knees or their feet or something. They need to put their feet up on I can't. What? Yes. Right. Well, and a few of them early on at Beth Israel, we had a doctor that always brought, extra stuff. But Sue Rabin has a whole pharmacy that she brings along. So Elisa, it's not that I don't want people to sign up. I do want them, but I'm not clear myself, which is why I was vague. So I want to give it like a week, and then I'll email everybody, because there should be a difference. If you put a deposit down, but you want to see, because you don't know, but it's a good way of gauging whether, I hope, the trip will go. I mean, if there are other people that maybe couldn't come, and it's word of mouth of telling other people as well about the trip.
It doesn't need to.
It does say the deposit's not refundable, is that true?
Well, that's the question. You know, that the rest of it, if you do.
Can you
X
repeat the
days out-
question? Repeat the
Oh,
questions.
I'm sorry. The question was, it says in there that the deposit is non-refundable. And it says that if you do it, 90 days in advance, you'll get it all back except for the deposit. Then the question is, well, but if people are sure they're going and you put trip insurance along with it, well, then that would be covered probably. But decoupled from trip insurance, because trip insurance, but then if you're not sure, then you're spending the money on trip insurance. That's the thing on the one hand, you have to book the trip and make sure you have enough people a year in advance. And on the other hand, that's the one aspect. So if I was vague, it's because it's a little fuzzy. I will clarify with him. Certainly, we're going to be away, but I'll try to get a hold of him.
But you may be vague about this too. Is there a chance that people are going to rush to sign up, the trip would sell out? Or is it more like there's a core group of interested people, there's plenty of room?
I'm not worried in the short term about the trip selling out. Now, I have not, so I'm glad you asked the question. Is the question Howard asked is there a chance the trip could sell out? This trip right now is only being sent via how I sent it to you. You can feel free to send it to anybody else. And actually, this will be recorded, this Zoom call. So if you have anybody you think would like to have a copy of the Zoom recording, let me know. But right now, it's only open to members of Beth Israel and friends, people that that are connected. We know of other people that are interested in taking it. At some point, if only to make it viable or to lower the cost, it could be that we would open up the trip, in which case if someone went online and wants to go to Morocco and wants to take a synagogue trip, they might come with our trip. But I'm not doing that. And I haven't decided on when. It's too early to make that decision. So I don't think, yes.
I just want to ask, is trip insurance a group policy or?
No, not usually. It's all done individually. Yes, always. Trip insurance. It was asked whether it was a group policy. No.
If you get the trip insurance and it's canceled, do you lose a trip insurance? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Even if it's canceled?
Correct. It depends on the trip insurance, but yes, in general. Like some, we had a cruise once that we were going to go on, and we had trip insurance, but the cruise canceled the trip, and we were able to get credit to be able to use on the next cruise, which was also canceled. Yes.
So not having done one of these trips before, I understand everybody arranges their own airfare because like the travel agency.
Well, no, there will be,
They'll
he
give
will
us-
attempt. You can't do that now because you have to do it 11 months in advance. So it's too early.
Right.
But, Chizuk Amuna arranged for a trip. They're going to go with 60, they have like 65 people and 2 buses. So they have a trip and people that want to go as a group, go as a group. But a lot of other people, probably the majority, are going to go a couple days ahead of time or use their miles or come from, Portugal or some other places, because you're already pretty close to Europe or anywhere else, even Israel.
Rabbi,
Yes.
sorry, it's David. I had a question. So the flip side of selling out, are you going to cap it? This is different than Eastern Europe where you Brandenburg Gate, huge streets and so on and so forth. Here we're walking in small alleys and so on and so forth. If you have 40 people, are they going to break it into groups and have more than one guide?
No, I think their answer is they're comfortable with like 35 to 37 people. A lot of groups have gone with 35 to 40 people. More than that, which I don't anticipate getting, there might be 2 buses and 2 guides, but yes, I'm not filling the bus to every last person. But I don't really think that's, I don't anticipate that that's going to be the case.
as an Islamic country,
Yes.
are there dress requirements for men and women?
Yeah, I think Israel. You're going into mosques, you're going into things. So, unfortunately, just like Israel, men can wear shorts, but women need to be dressed more modestly. So if you've ever gone on any trip to Eastern Europe, to Israel, you visit churches, you visit mosques, you visit more traditional synagogues. In Israel, we told people, so have a wraparound skirt that you can throw over shorts, assuming, because it will be shorts weather for most days. The question was asked, obviously, about dress in Islamic country, but most tourists that are going to Israel, unless they're going into the other things, they dress just as you dress as a tourist in the summer with normal clothes.
Looks like there's trip insurance listed here.
Right.
Yeah, but I think that's what I had to clarify, because it's too inexpensive.
Because a lot of time, because otherwise, like we just went to Italy and we paid a price. It was a group price.
Right.
We didn't pay.
So I don't know. The question was asked by Sue. In the very back, it says $495 trip, but it doesn't specify. And it's a little, I'm a little unsure, because that's very cheap. I mean, you can't, I don't understand.
That's about what we pay for our Italy.
Yeah, I think they usually run about 10% of the.
I don't know. I have to ask. So, but I mean, then that covers both, registering ahead of time, and you're still spending the same money as registering, but you're also getting the trip insurance. So like I said, that was on my list, but I was going to call this week, and it wasn't the right week, because they run trips to Israel too, and they're in the midst of going through a lot. Yeah. Any other questions? No? Yes, go ahead.
If they did a group, or maybe you can find that, a group flight,
Mhm.
could you find out, not, obviously not to the same cost, but would there be any way that they could help make arrangements if somebody wanted to upgrade to business class?
Probably not. That's usually, I've never seen that before, but I can ask. Yeah.
How long is the flight?
But let me just, sorry. The question was, if someone wanted to go in premium economy, could they look into it as part of a group price for everything? So I can ask.
We did that in Eastern Europe. Some people did that on our group.
But they did it on their own. You're talking about facilitating.
Or just, yeah, in other words, I would expect that you have to really do it independently, but what I'm saying is there a way that they book it for you and you go through them and then you pay them?
Yeah, I understand.
For the upgrade.
I understand what you're saying. Can they get an upgrade price just like they would get? Yeah, I get it. I'm sorry, someone else had a question.
Curious how long the flight is.
That I'm not sure. My guess is you're still talking about the edges of Europe, so it's probably like a 7-hour flight, thereabouts, 7.5 hours, 8 hours. But the thing is, from Marrakesh, there are direct flights, I know, to Casablanca. From Marrakesh are probably a layover flight, so it's a little bit longer.
To Morocco, 7 hours.
Right, that's what I said. It's
Yeah.
about 7 hours. Yeah, yeah.
Think we're in English, basically.
Yeah, I said, it's like going to Europe. It's like going, I think it's 5 hours, which is not as bad as Israel or some of the other places, time zone wise, to adjust.
So another question about the synagogues, they're Orthodox separate seating or?
Well, so they're all Orthodox. There is no, the question was about synagogues, whether they're all Orthodox. I would assume so. Whether or not they're separate seating, I'm not sure, but I would assume so, because that's also the culture of the Islamic world as well that you're in. I mean, women have far more rights in Morocco, but in mosques, women don't even go to some extent. They don't even have an equal separate section. So yes, I would assume so. But there isn't another alternative, and we wouldn't not go to those synagogues like that, Yeah, no, there are no, there is no conservative movement presence. I'm sure the day school, well, it'll be interesting to see. I don't, how the day school is run, but my guess is that's run in a more moderate way. Any other questions? All right, well, thank you everyone for coming. Do me a favor, everybody that is online, send to my email, rebj@aol.com, your name and your email address and your telephone number. That is if I don't know who you are, and you can forward me any of you that know of other people. And if you need a copy of the Zoom, I can send a copy of the Zoom. And from now on, from here forward, it's in a sense, word of mouth. You know, I think 30 to 35 people is a perfect number, but let's at least get to 25. That's the, you know, that's the major number, because that's the biggest drop in the cost of the trip. After that, you know, it's maybe $100 or $150. So I'd be just as happy with 27, 28 people and a smaller group, because you're right, it does take, having taken 2 buses and 72 people to Israel, as Ellie remembers, it's quite a task getting everybody in and out of the bus. And the only solution I had to that was telling people that we would leave if they weren't there. And we waited the first day, half hour, 45 minutes, and 2 families weren't there. And I left with the bus and went back to the hotel. Now, the good news is we were in Yaffo and they just had to take a taxi to Tel Aviv. But it was a good lesson, and everybody was on the bus and off the bus on time. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, everybody, for joining us on Zoom. Take care.